Welcome to Lock Reference and WaynesLockShop.com. If you're interested in becoming a member of the largest group of locksmiths online, scan that QR code and join today. Today we're going to be exchanging or changing a mechanical three-wheel dial lock for an electronic keypad. The first step is to take the back cover off. Then we're going to go ahead and pull this spline key out with a pair of pliers. You can use pliers or vice grips. Just do not break the spline key in the hole. That will cause bad times. You'll then rotate the spindle out in the counterclockwise position. Notice how I have my hand on the drive cam so it does not spin, and then you use your other hand to spin the dial out. After that, you'll just remove the 4 screws, the mounting screws that actually hold the lock to the safe. You can see those are Phillips head screws. Now, I've got the dial ring on the other side. Again, 2 Phillips head screws. We go ahead and pop those out, and the dial ring now comes off. Now everything with the original lock is now off. You'll also notice that spring-loaded relocking device is locking the safe bolts in the open position, or in the locked position, I'm sorry, so that you cannot mess this up and accidentally set the relocker off in there. That spring-loaded relocker is going to be the key of this entire lock change. The number one cause of lockouts when people try and change their own locks is that relock device going off. So we're going to start off with this secure ram swing bolt lock. I do explain the difference between a swing bolt lock and a full bolt spring retraction lock in the article that I have, and I'll do my best to explain here. But you're going to have 2 studs that go on the outside of the safe, top and bottom. If your safe doesn't have those holes drilled and threaded, you can do that with a drill and tap. Sometimes they do need to be tapped. Now we've run the wire through the spindle hole into the inside of the safe, and I'm indicating where the wire channel is. That wire channel is an indentation from the center of the spindle hole all the way to the back side of the lock to allow free egress for that cable to move and not get pinched, crimped, or damaged in any way, shape, or form. Most electronics are only going to have 3 mounting bolts. Those 3 Phillips head mounting bolts is all that's required. Now that you plug the lock in, you're pretty much set and ready to go. Okay, you can see that I'm now recompressing that relocking spring, or that relocker device with that spring. I'm setting it up out of the way, and then I'm removing these 2 screws on the back cover to reinstall that relocking plate. The way that this is designed is this is an anti-burglary or anti-tamper device. The first thing somebody's going to do if they try and burglarize a safe and they're not educated is they're going to try and beat the lock off of the safe, thinking that it's just going to open up. No lock, nothing to hold it up. It's going to come right off. That's not the case. That's going to fire that relocking device. And again, that is the number one cause of lockouts when people try and do this. I've even actually had that happen. So if you take my advice and lock the bolts open with that relocking device engaged so it is impossible to shut the door, that will solve a lot of your problems. That's the secure ram swing bolt installed. Now we'll go over a few other things. We've got the ESL 10. This is an American Security ESL 10. We're going to go ahead and use a little trick that I've come up with. Wrap that little phone cord jack in a piece of tape, because what can happen is you can shove it down the spindle hole, and if you don't get it all the way through or you need to retract it back, it acts like a spur and you can break it inside the spindle hole during the installation. So I tape that thing down so that it fits through the spindle hole. Okay? Once we have the lock mounted, this one's a little bit different since the wire comes off the lock and plugs into the keypad, and the other one came off the keypad and plugged into the lock. This one we're going to have to mount the lock first. Again, use the 3 Allen head screws. It only takes 3. You get those mounted in place, get the wire ran through, and then you go ahead and start mounting the keypad. The keypad dial ring goes on first, and then the keypad goes on top of it. Here I'm showing and indicating the Allen head screws that are used. Those white little Teflon washers are also part of the equation. They can help take up some room if your holes are not deep enough, and they also kind of act like a locking device. So I highly recommend you put that Teflon piece in between the bolt and the lock itself as you install them. Here again, we're installing that relocker plate. That relocker plate sometimes needs to be modified. This one, the American security locks come with one. The AMSEC ESL 10 and 12s come with one that is specifically designed to fit that bolt pattern, and hopefully it works in your application such as here. Here you can see the lock bolt is retracted. You can see that the relocker is retracted, and everything is working in the correct position. Now I've got some still photos to go over this just a little bit slower with you. As you're removing the mechanical dial, that spline key is what you're looking to remove. Once that comes out, you then spin you thread the dial off in the counterclockwise direction, just like threading a nut and bolt. And then you go ahead and I indicate that relocker is in play. I lock the bolts open so that it is impossible to shut the safe until everything is reset fully. Here we show that that relocking device is in play against the boltwork, and here we show the dial. So from that point, we're going to go ahead and pull the dial off. The dial should be out of the way once it's threaded from the drive cam, and now we're going to go ahead and uninstall the screws. Once we take these screws off, that dial ring's going to come off and everything gets out of the way. Once you have everything off and out of the way, then you have room to go ahead and install the electronic keypad such as this ESL 10 that we have right here. This is one of the locks that we stock on the truck. Very, very common. Again, here's that little tape trick. We're taping that. You can see it right there. You can see that little spur that kicks out there. If you get that into the spindle hole, I've had it happen where you couldn't get through, you couldn't pull it back, you couldn't do anything. You yank on it real hard and then it breaks that connection. Here's a picture of the keypad with the batteries in their position. You make sure you plug the batteries into the lock keypad itself so that you've got good operation. And again, we've got the 3 mounting bolts, Allen head screws with the ESL 10 series and ESL 20 series. Then we make sure that we put that relocking plate back into play and that it supports and holds that relocker ready to fire. If you do not take extra special care of that relocking device, it will haunt you later on down the line. And here we go. Now you can see this is a Liberty safe that's been retrofitted with an electronic lock, and here's what it looks like with the back cover and everything else put on. Here we have the secure RAM lock in play. I believe we're showing how to we could do this backwards. So if you have a customer that has an electronic lock on, you could remove the electronic lock and you could go ahead and install a mechanical keypad. So we're going to just go ahead and unplug the lock, unbolt the lock, undo the studs that go with that keypad, and once it's off and out of the way, then we can go ahead and take a look at having the mechanical lock being installed. Here's the difference between a swing bolt and the full square bolt. The swing bolt is obviously that half moon shape. So now we're back to a blank canvas. We're going to go ahead and install this dial ring for a mechanical lock. So let's say that we're taking off the electronic lock and we're putting on the mechanical one. You need to make sure this little bushing goes in right there. You can see that little bushing that goes in the center. That's actually, the dial's actually going to ride on that. The dial ring's going to ride on that. Or I'm sorry, the dial is just going to ride on that. Then we mount the lock with the 4 mounting screws that go on it on the inside. We thread the spindle all the way in to the lock. It's going to stick out further because safes have different thicknesses. I then mark that with a Sharpie marker. I take it outside. Don't do this in the customer's house. I trim or cut that spindle to the exact size needed for this, and then I kind of roll it around and make sure that all the little burrs and everything are gone so that it doesn't cross thread. Here's a picture of it all nice and neat. Then here it looks like it's nice and flat and flush. You don't want any tension. When you're mounting this, this is the most important part. You see that VD where it says VD, that's for vertical down. You need to make sure that you put your spline key in the correct direction. If the lock bolt is facing down, then it is a vertical down. If it's facing up, it's vertical up. And then likewise for left hand and right hand as well. You need to make sure that that fits everything. Here we're showing the relocking plate being installed on the back of the lock, and the dial ring and everything is now attached. You have successfully been able to install or uninstall any configuration you want. For more information, go to wayneslockshop.com.